Hello and welcome. My name is Chris Heineman, Senior Director of Corporate Marketing here at Highfive. I'll be your host for today's webinar, 5 Ways to Turn Your Meeting Rooms into Productivity Powerhouses. In this webinar, I'll be joined by CEO and founder of Let's Do Video, Mr. David Maldow. Also joining us is my esteemed colleague, Jennifer Bowie, who leads our product marketing organization here at Highfive. Together, they'll discuss how video conferencing solutions were supposed to be the answer to today's evolving remote workforce. However, legacy solutions remain costly and challenging for both IT and end users. Today, you'll discover why meeting rooms haven't met expectations and how to modernize these rooms so teams, regardless of their location, can feel like they're connected and focus on getting down to work, not on bad tech. You'll also learn the ways that hardware and software can work together to eliminate barriers to video collaboration and how IT teams can better meet the needs of end users. Okay, so let's get started. Thank you very much for joining. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. David Maldow. David?
Thanks so much, Chris. And thank you everyone for joining me here today at the Let's Do Video's luxurious penthouse suite where we do all of our analytics. So let's jump into the presentation. First of all, I want to thank the team at Highfive and Dolby for having me here today, talking about 5 ways to turn our meeting rooms into productivity powerhouses. And I've done a lot of webinars, in particular a lot of webinars on productivity. That's really my thing. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's not about making nice meeting rooms to show our guests. It's about getting work done. And that's why I'm a little confused about something that's happened in the industry lately. I'm back in the meeting room. Now, why am I upset about that, or why am I confused about that? I've been spending my entire career trying to get us out of the meeting room. The meeting room was a nightmare. It was the worst. You've all seen the memes. There's YouTube channels, there's online comics, there's Twitter accounts just making fun of bad meetings. Meetings are terrible. From a social, cultural perspective, we're doing meetings wrong. Everyone is just looking at their email. They're like, I wish I can get out of this and get my work done. And from a technology point of view, we were doing it wrong. The systems were too hard to use. Meeting rooms are where work went to die, and meeting rooms are where video conferencing systems went to die. We had a technology problem, and we had a cultural problem. And my goal was to get us out of the meeting room. We don't work in meeting rooms. We work at our desks. We work at a coffee shop. Give me video conferencing here. Give me video conferencing here. And cloud came along and gave us that. And I was happy. And then I started talking to these cloud vendors, and they said, you know, David, the meeting room is still king. And I said, no, not the meeting room. No, not the meeting room. They said, yes, 80%, 90% of our group video calls, the way it works is one of the points is a meeting room. The way people are working is they're meeting in the rooms, and the one of the 2 people who aren't on the teams are calling in. I'm like, oh, that's a different dynamic than the old way. Okay, so we're fixing it. We're fixing meetings. We're fixing them with technology, and we're fixing them culturally. Now, culturally, the way we're fixing it is thanks to our millennials. Now, we've been talking for a long time about millennials are coming into the workforce. We got to get ready for them as if it was a terrible thing. Millennials like to do things their own way, and we're going to have to accommodate them. Oh, no, it's going to be terrible. Boy, were we wrong. I'm a millennial workflow person. I'm not a millennial. I'm a pre-millennial, but I'm a millennial workflow person. Their way is better. It's not about accommodating them. It's about learning from them. And they're here now. They're almost 40. They're the plurality. There's more millennials than Generation Xers or baby boomers. They're the bosses now. So we have to do things their way. And fortunately, their way is better. They're real team workers. We've always talked about teamwork. We always talked about 1 + 1 = 3. But we didn't do it. We weren't good at it. Honestly, us pre-millennials, we weren't raised that way. We were raised to be individual workers. We'd go to school and hang out with our friends. And then when we come home, we'd have 5 or 6 hours of isolation where we were alone, where we did our homework, did our chores, watched TV, did our hobbies, whatever, and we weren't in contact with anyone. And then at night, we'd call our friends and go out. Millennials did, and that's the way we structured work. We go to work, we're alone for 6 or 7 hours, we do our work, and then we're social with friends. That's not the way millennials grew up. They grew up as team players. When they went home from school, their friends are all right here. on all their chat apps and all their group messaging apps and everything. In fact, when they're home from school, they're probably more connected to their team, more connected to their friends than when they're at school and they're not allowed to make calls. So they don't do the isolation thing. And that's a good thing because groups do work better. So they fixed meetings. Meetings aren't status sessions where the boss talks and everyone just like, oh, let me get back to my work. Meetings, we dig in and get things done. I have a millennial on my team, Anna. When we first started Let's Do Video 5 years ago, I was traditional. I was doing traditional meetings. And I could see that she hated them. I could see her rolling her eyes. I could see her not paying attention. I wasn't doing it right. Now we do working sessions. And a half an hour meeting would kill her. 2 days ago, we did a 3-hour working session, getting ready for the big InfoCom conference next week. At the end, she was like, let's keep going. This feels great. That's a working session. That's the power of the millennial workflow. And that's what I'm really excited about. But that only solves half the problem of meeting rooms. The other half is the technology really had issues. When we look at legacy video conferencing systems, the old school video conferencing systems that are still in place in a lot of offices, the old joke was, what time is the 3 o'clock meeting going to start? Is it going to start at 3:08? Is it going to start at 3:10? It was really hard just to dial a call. You need to bring in an IT person, an expert to dial the call for you. The audio, two-thirds of the meetings had audio quality issues, and a very small percentage of people were satisfied with these old systems. Now, fortunately, this is being solved today with cloud video. I talked about those old systems that were in the rooms. They weren't cloud systems. They were these devices made by one manufacturer that only talked to the same device made by the same manufacturer. So you have to buy 2 of them and put one in each room to get them to talk to each other, and you can only sit in those rooms. It's not how we wanted to do video conferencing. No one was satisfied. The good news is cloud has completely solved this. I'm sure if we talk to our friends at Highfive, their customers are much more than 17% satisfied. And when you do a Highfive meeting, and for that matter, a lot of their competitors, it's click to join. It's not 8 minutes to start a call. It's 2 seconds. And getting to audio, the audio has gotten a lot better on cloud video in general. Now, we still have these problems in the workplace because we haven't converted to cloud yet. We still have all these legacy systems. But as the cloud is coming in, a lot of these things are going to get better. Basically, as an analyst, I had a checklist of things that we needed to fix for people to use video conferencing. Make the quality better, make the ease of use better, make interoperability better, make the video better, make the audio better, all these things. And over the last 5 or 10 years, we've checked them all off, which is very cool. Now, there was one thing, I love it when I'm wrong. I love to learn. And there was something that I was very, very wrong about for a lot of years. I thought what we needed for video conferencing was good enough audio. And I learned that good enough audio is not good enough. I thought if it's a little bit better than the phone, you could hear the other person, it sounds okay, we're good to go. That's good audio. It is not. The problem with audio is it's invisible, and you don't realize what the problems with audio are. And you sit in a meeting with good enough audio, and at the end of the meeting you say, I'm so glad this meeting is over. I'm exhausted. I say, why? It was a good meeting. We had good work done. There's good people. Everyone got along. It was productive. And people say, I don't know. I just feel tired. It's the audio. With good enough audio, you have to strain to listen. You don't realize you're doing it, but you're exhausting yourself. You have to use your brain to try to eliminate background noise because the audio doesn't do it. You have to strain to understand people. You can't distinguish between different speakers. If there's latency, you talk over each other. And we take all these things for granted, and people were using less video because of them, and I couldn't figure it out until I realized we need superb audio. And that's why I was really excited when Dolby came into the industry. When Dolby said, hey, we're interested in video conferencing, want to help. Oh my goodness, I grew up with Dolby. You don't need to convince me that Dolby audio is good. You know, Dolby audio is a known thing. And I said, oh, this is wonderful. Please, welcome, Dolby, come and help us out. And then my friends at Highfive called me and said, hey, we're working with Dolby now. We're going to, we're going to have Dolby audio in our solution. I said, great for Highfive. Oh, this is wonderful. So I'm thinking you're going to have some sort of Dolby device that runs Highfive. They said, David, you don't get it. All Dolby audio is all Highfive audio is Dolby now. So if I'm using a Highfive call here or a Highfive call on my desktop or a Highfive call on anything, it's all Dolby. All this stuff is solved. So big relief for me. So let's break this up. I've been talking a long time. Let's take it to the audience. Jen, can you bring up the first poll question?
Great. Yes. Just bringing it up now. You can click on the next slide. Yeah. Chris, I think someone's supposed to bring that up, the slide. Awesome. All right. So first, going to kick things off for the polling question. So first question for you guys, and I'd love to hear from you, is where are you in your video conferencing journey for your meeting rooms? Select your answer. Please take a look at the BrightTalk dashboard and click on the Vote tab below the webinar screen to see the question and answers. Poll will be open for the next few minutes, so make sure to submit your answer.
Okay, and I guess I'll keep going while people start filling out the poll. All right, so we talked about the technical problems in video conferencing rooms, the reasons that people were having bad experiences, the audio not being good enough, the video not being good enough, not being ease of use. But there was more to that. If you make the perfect video conferencing system that solves all these problems, but it doesn't meet your team's workflow, they aren't going to use it. People like to work the way they like to work, especially millennial workflow people like, this pre-millennial right here. So we need a new approach. I love this slide. This slide really shows me the failure of the video conferencing industry. Now let me explain what I'm showing here. These gentlemen have an issue. They have a problem that needs to be solved. They're getting sun in their eyes at the game. They want to block the sun from their eyes. So they need a tool that will do that. And someone thought it'd be a great idea to give them a hat with a visor on the front. The visor will block the sun. Well, guess what? These guys like wearing their hats backwards, so they still have a problem. And we look at this and we laugh. And we make fun of these guys. They're the dumb ones. They're not using the technology right. Ha ha on them. And we applied the same thing to video conferencing. We said our users aren't doing it right. We gave them this great stuff. If you use video conferencing, you have better meetings. You have more impact. People hear you better. They understand you better. They remember it better. There's so many better benefits of video conferencing, and these users aren't using them, and it's their fault. No, it wasn't their fault. We weren't giving them something that they wanted. These guys like wearing their hats backwards. So we need some sort of hat that even when you wear it backwards blocks the sun. Maybe give them a cowboy hat, something. It's not their fault, and it wasn't our users' fault. We were telling our users, if you want to have a productive meeting, get up from your desk, gather all your materials, walk down the hall to a meeting room, make sure it's booked, call an IT person to come in and make the call for you, call the person you want to talk to, tell them to go to their meeting room if they can book it, and then make your video call. No, that's not what we wanted to do. What we wanted to do is when we're sitting in the meeting room and our best salesperson is across the country, we want to be able to see her and for her to be able to see us when we're having our meeting. We don't want her to be a second-class citizen on audio only. That's what we asked for, and that's not what we got. So we didn't use video, and we blame the users. So how do we fix this? We do it the new way. And the new way, and I also love this slide, this is something called the desire path. And I recommend this philosophy not just for video conferencing, but for all of AV, anything trying to support working teams. And let me explain what this concept is. And if we look at this picture over on my right, see that little path through the grass? The way that was formed was people were walking there. Now, the engineers who designed that area did not want the people to walk there. You could tell because they put a sidewalk, a nice, smooth, paved sidewalk. Oh, it's nice and easy on the feet. You could rollerblade on it, but it goes around that corner. That's the way they wanted people to walk. And the people said, no, we'll just cut across. That happens in the workplace. We give people video conferencing systems in the meeting rooms, and they say, no, we just want to use some consumer app on our phone. Oh, we don't want using consumer apps in the office. We got to stop that. So what do? We put up fences. We put up don't walk on the grass signs. And how effective are they? People hop over the fences. They ignore the signs. People will use the apps they want to use. But we really can't have consumer apps in the workplace. It's not secure. So we have to fix it. So what do? We don't block the desire path. We don't cut off the desire path. We improve the desire path. We let them show us how they want to work, and then we smooth it down for them. This is a picture of a typical campus quad. And I've always wondered when I was younger and went to school, I'm like, how did they design, what kind of computer could design these paths? There's no right angles. This is weird. It's all organic. I don't understand how this was done. And then I learned how it was done. What they do is when they first plant the grass, they don't pave. They just leave the grass. and then let desire paths form. Before these were paved, they were desire paths like you see on the other side. And the ones that were wider, they paved them wider. The ones that were thinner, they paved them thinner because the people, the students, the faculty, showed them their desire path, their workflow. And then the engineers came in and said, okay, that's how you want to walk. That's the way you're going to walk. We're going to smooth it down for you because we know you want to rollerblade on it. This is what I want from the AV industry. This is what I want from the video conferencing industry. This is what I want from all room designers. Stop designing rooms and telling people how to use them. Learn the desire path and make it better for them. And that really fixes a lot of things. Now, it is getting more complicated because huddle rooms are on the rise. Now, a couple of years ago, I was writing articles, and all my fellow analysts were writing articles saying, huddle rooms, is this a marketing fad? Is this a buzzword to sell more equipment, or is it a real thing? No one's writing those articles anymore. Huddle rooms are an incredibly real thing. And they're saying there's dozens of huddle rooms out there for every meeting room that's out there. And the reason they're important, it ties into this whole millennial workflow. If millennials are in an office and the sales team likes hanging out by the espresso machine in the back corner, that's their workspace. You don't want to tell them to go into a meeting room. You shouldn't be working there. Go into a meeting room. They're working. Let them work. But if they want to bring in the remote person, guess what? You need to empower that little corner. You need to make that little corner a huddle room. You need to give it video if it needs video. You need to give it audio if it needs audio, electric whiteboard, whatever tools they need. And these huddle rooms, they're complicated because they're not all rectangular rooms. They're hard to design. They're hard to figure out. And we need the next generation of video equipment that's so flexible and so easy to use to make it all work. Now, keep in mind, 90% of meeting rooms still do not have video capabilities. That's not even including the huddle rooms. This is a huge problem. Now, the video conferencing industry sees this as an opportunity to try to solve a problem, but I really see this as a huge problem. Millennials need video. They want to be a part of the meeting. I grew up on audio and I got used to it, but now I'm spoiled. I can't handle phone calls anymore. I feel like, imagine you're in a meeting room and everyone's talking and you have to sit under the table with your hands over your eyes and no one can see you and you can't see anyone. Do you really think you'd be just as effective in that meeting? Of course not. You're a second-class citizen. And we can't have, it's one thing to be a second-class citizen in an old-school terrible status meeting where you're just listening in. But if we're participating, if we're getting work done, we all need to be full status. So we're solving this by getting back into the meeting room, but the traditional solutions are complex. And this slide is kind of funny because when I created this slide with the Highfive team, I thought we were talking about the old way of doing it, those traditional codec things I was talking about that only talk to the same brand and everything. They're so complicated, they're so expensive. But we have this new way of doing things, which I call the software meeting room. And Highfive is on version 2. And what they're talking about here is version 1 of the software meeting room. Now I'm going to explain what that is, but the software meeting room, it's a great advance forward from the old way, but its first implementation wasn't quite ideal. There were a bunch of cables to connect. The billing was sort of complicated. There were headaches. There were frustrations with it. These people look really upset, and it's kind of confusing for me because, hey, we're still better off than we were in the old days, but yes, there's still some problems to be solved. So let me explain what I mean by this whole software meeting room thing and why I was so excited about it. So this is a typical software meeting room kit. Let me move over here so you can see better. And the point of it is, if you like cloud software, use this to run your cloud software. Instead of having that old box from, some Norwegian company that doesn't exist anymore that only talks to itself, whatever cloud service that you have on your phone or your desktop, you could have a similar cloud service running on an iMac Mini or an Intel NUC. And you get a peripheral camera, you get a speaker, you connect it all together, and you have software in the meeting room. Hey, this is great. Click to join, all those wonderful things we want. This is what it looks like when it's all set up. And I've been sent some of these kits to evaluate as part of my job as an analyst. It takes a little bit, you connect them all together, and this is what you have. And again, it is so much better than those old systems because, people can actually use these, but you can still see there's some things I would like to improve. First of all, I still see remote controls. I'm not a fan of remote controls. No one uses them. Everyone's afraid to touch them. Whatever it is the remote control is supposed to do is just not going to get done. If the remote control is meant to move the camera, no one's going to move the camera. Get rid of the remote controls. I prefer a touchpad. People aren't afraid of touchpads. Also, sometimes you need these little cheats to kind of help you. And they're not. Oh, I just had a message from here. Am I still on? Okay. They're helpful, but they shouldn't be needed. I prefer to have it all digital. I want to have my instructions on the screen. I want to come into the room and the screen says, to make your call, click here. That's what I would want. That would be ideal. But still, I was happy with these because they were a big step forward from what we had before, despite the fact that we still have a bunch of cables, some remote controls. Oh, and one other thing that really isn't ideal about this is we have parts here from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish vendors. And I'm sure they're all good companies and everything, but the problem is if something breaks, I don't know where to go to get support. If my call isn't coming in, well, is it a problem with the camera? Is it one of the cables? Is it the NUC? Is the speaker causing? I don't know who to call and say, hey, I need help. If all this came from one vendor, that'd be great. Hey, it isn't working. What do I do? You get some help. So let's take another quick break. Again, I feel like I've been talking a long time. Jen, could we get another poll up?
Absolutely. Thanks, David. Yeah, so you guys heard, there's a lot, it sounds like there's a lot of challenges and pain points still existing as today even with these new solutions. So I'm going to throw the question back to you guys. What is your main pain point with your current video conferencing solutions? Again, select your answer, click on the Vote tab below in the webinar screen on the BrightTalk dashboard. Poll will be open for the next few minutes, and David, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Thanks. Okay, so I've teased that this is version 1 of what I call the software meeting room system. We first started seeing them a few years ago. And as much as I love it, there are some things I don't love about it. It's funny, the Highfive people, they just roll their eyes when I say I like this stuff because they're on version 2, which improved a lot of the problems that I've complained about. And they sent me one of these to evaluate. Let me hide myself so you can see what's going on here. A few months ago, if you go to Let's Do Video and search the content, you should be able to find an evaluation of this product that I wrote. And as you can see, there's only 3 components, just 3 cables to connect, and they're all made by Dolby. And they're all running Highfive software. So if you have a problem, you call Dolby, you call Highfive. I connected it in a few minutes, and when I turned, and there was no instruction sheet, no cheat sheets. When I turned it on, the screen said, this is what you do next to start your first call. Basically solved a lot of the problems that I was just complaining about from the version 1. Again, I recommend you read the eval of it. And if you put them side by side, now I start to get why the Highfive people are looking at me like I'm crazy when I say I like that stuff. When you compare what you have on this side, maybe I should move over here. But you compare, version 2 to version 1, version 2 does look a lot more attractive. But there's a lot more to it than just the hardware model. There's also, remember that images of the confused, frustrated people? One of the things was pricing. So I'd like to hand it over to Jen now to help us out to understand this new modern pricing model.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. So you guys have heard, a lot of pain points around the experience within the rooms, from the trends from moving from complex legacy hardware to now what I like to call the do-it-yourself kits. But some of the things still are prevalent in terms of the legacy days, right? So this whole notion around pricing models. So as we're looking through or shifting to a modern model, we look at existing solutions of today, and David actually alluded to this earlier, is around this, pricing models, right? Still as today, there are a lot of archaic pricing models. What I mean by that is that, you have companies who still charge based off what type of users, right? So you've got your managed users versus active users. And what that does for the companies, our customers, is that they're having to go through and try to determine who can use video conferencing, limit these features, who needs those features. But in this modern day age, we don't think that you need to limit video conferencing. We should democratize video conferencing so it's available for everyone. So as you see in the first bullet point here is we need to be able to simplify pricing models. And so how do we do that? We move towards a rooms-based pricing. And what I mean by that is that, as David has kind of discussed throughout this meeting today, is that we should really be driving value within the meeting rooms, right? So you went from this transition from the meetings within the meeting rooms to now let's push more around desktop collaboration. But the challenges with that is that, folks who are working remotely, how do they then get integrated into the organization? So a rooms-based pricing model should look like this. I pay for a room, and then I enable video conferencing for everyone across the organization. So that's what we do here at Highfive. Pay for a room, and everyone within your organization can have video conferencing, whether they're calling in from a meeting room or from one of their desktop apps, or even from the browser if they didn't want to download and install an application.
And if I could jump in for a second, I think that's just so intuitive, especially because we talked about we're moving back into the rooms. If you enable a room, you enable a room. You don't enable a room for people with licenses. Could you imagine if we did that with the speakerphone in the meeting rooms? We said, if you want to use a speakerphone, you have to have an account. How much more complicated would audio meetings be? Like if you have a phone in the room, everyone can use it. If you have a video system in the room, everyone should be able to use it. It's confusing any other way.
Well, you bring up a good point there, David, because if you do limit it and the first time that the end user is unable to use it, they will never adopt the technology, right? So definitely run into that issue as well. And then the second point here is around this OpEx versus CapEx model. Everyone talks about this conversation, right? And so even with the version, like we say the V1 options of today, you still have, it's broken down into a CapEx plus an OpEx model. But with our hardware as a service from Highfive, it's a true OpEx model. It's recurring-based, subscription-based pricing model. So it's definitely easy on the accounting practices and on the books as well. Second point I want to make is, the simplifying the deployment and installation and management of the systems. When you have multiple hardware components that you have to purchase from multiple vendors, right? So there's some research that's been done that mentioned that within a huddle room, you could see on average 7 to 10 hardware components that you have to purchase. And that actually leads to about 10 points of failure for that room. So it's kind of a crazy stat I wanted to throw out there. So when you're looking at a solution, right, so within this modern model, you want to look from something that's right out of the box, right? And you saw that earlier, 3 components within a box. You don't want to go to, I like to use the analogy of the Cheesecake Factory, right? You have to go and okay, I have to buy this and that and this and that for one room. And you have to multiply that against how many rooms you have within the organization. So it could cause a lot of just friction and pain points challenges within your buying process. And the last point here around the user experience, I really want to focus in on this. And I'm actually going to kind of turn this over to David for his input. But, he and I have been chatting about this. And, when you're looking at applications that you install or try to deploy within your organization for your workforce, people use applications today. We're IoT, we're all consumer first, we're technology first. And so people get used to the applications they use in their personal lives, right? And video is one of those components, right? So when they come to an organization and when they come to work, they expect that same level of workflow and the ease of use within the applications that companies are installing. David,
yeah, absolutely. Oh. Yeah. I'm sorry, you want me to jump in or?
Yeah, we'll have to get your feedback on this.
Yeah, sure. That's crucially important, and it ties to a bigger picture. I've realized that the office is no longer what I used to think it was. This is actually my second career. My first career, I was an office worker. I had a 9-to-5 job. I worked in an office, and I thought my job was the building. The physical walls of the building was the office, and it really was because that's where everything I needed to do my work was. The 3 bigs: my people, my tools, and my files. I didn't have them at home. I didn't have them at Starbucks. I didn't have them anywhere else. They were at the office. The office was my job, and that's where I did work. Little by little, we've been moving to the cloud. Moving my files to the cloud was one of the first things. Started moving my tools to the cloud. Excel is now Excel Online. I mean, everything's on the cloud. And my people. I started working remotely. My people are in the cloud. So my office doesn't have walls. And if Let's Do Video grows to the point where we do get a physical space, we have enough people, we need that, that will just be an adjunct to the office. That'll be a physical space that's a nice extra to be able to get some work done. But the office is our apps. They're so important to us. So they have to be tied into everything we do. When you're hiring new people, when you're trying to hire good millennials, sure, they're going to look around the office. They want a nice office to work in, but they're more concerned with their real office. How are they going to get work? Are they going to be able to use the apps they want to use? And are they going to tie into the meeting room? When you're in the meeting room, if all your files are on whatever cloud app, you want your stuff to integrate so you could work. It all comes down to being able to work.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, moving on.
Oh, on to the next slide?
Yep, on to the next slide.
Okay.
Excellent. So we kind of talked about, what types of solutions are there, the hardware, the software, but I really want to kind of jump into the meeting rooms, right? So when you look at the meeting rooms of today, technology aside, what do you guys expect? People expect there's probably a whiteboard hanging on the wall. There's a table. Traditionally speaking, there might be a conference phone on the desk. But there's other things that you would need to embed in there to actually bring and leverage in other folks across your organization who are trying to dial into the meeting. So it's three things that come to mind for me is around this notion around intelligent framing, scene framing. And so from a video perspective, folks are expecting these types of intelligent features where they can feel like they're in the meeting, right? They're part of the culture versus in the old days where you'd have audio conferencing and they dialed in and some of the issues you experienced, like, I can't hear you. What did that person say? If the phone is sitting in the corner, and it's hard to just be able to integrate and interface with the folks within the room. So these are the three things that you should be looking at for spatial audio separation, right? So this ability to be able to hear from different distances based off, this is from Dolby Voice codec. It really gives you that sense of community that you're able to communicate and as if you're there in the meeting room. And the third is around whiteboard, right? And I think, David, you brought up a good metaphor on this in terms of taking a picture and sending it. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, I'd like to talk to all three of these points. I'm really excited about all of these for the same reason. When video conferencing vendors like Highfive's predecessors used to come to me with new advances, new features, there are always things that came from the lab. Our developers figured out they can do this, so we put it in the product and we hope people use it. These did not start out in the lab. These started out in the marketplace. Consumers were asking for these things. Consumers needed these things. And we went back and we gave it to them. It was the direction, the impetus came from where it should have came from. It was a desire path kind of thing. Intelligent framing, that's a huge one for me. I mentioned before that remote control that moves the camera, no one touches that. No one feels like they know how to or what they're supposed to do. So what happens is wherever that camera is set up, when they first set up the room, that's where the camera stays. And if it's pointing at the left side of the room, every meeting, everyone huddles over to the left side of the room. And if there's 3 seats that aren't in the camera, those 3 people aren't seen. Obviously, that's not ideal. And there's been no fix up to now. But with intelligent framing, the camera itself knows what a person is and knows how to frame out to capture everyone or zoom in. And it's getting better. It uses machine learning, so it gets smoother and smoother every iteration, and it's getting better at. It's already pretty good, but it's getting really better at finding what we should be seeing, and it's a natural experience. It doesn't feel jumpy. It doesn't feel confusing. It kind of feels like you're looking around. You hear someone talk over there, and the camera moves over there just as you would look over there. Love it. Spatial audio separation. This is pretty cool. There's it's almost like a magic trick we could do with our ears. I never realized this until I started talking to the people at Dolby. If you're at a cocktail party, it's just noise. But if you try to focus, you can listen in on those people talking over there. And if you try to focus, you can listen in. You can isolate conversations. Can't do that with mediocre audio. You could do it with Dolby audio. It's pretty cool. The last one, whiteboard collaboration. Now this one's pretty neat. I love the way this works because yes, we did have a problem. I told you I don't want to be a second-class citizen in a meeting. I don't want to be sitting under the table covering my eyes while everyone else is seeing the work and what's going on. And with a typical whiteboard, as you can see, it's on an angle. And what usually happens is, I need to see what's on that whiteboard. Could someone take a picture of it and email it to me? We were really doing that. And what Dolby has done, and this is so cool, somehow the camera captures the whiteboard at the angle and then digitally alters it to make it straight. So it's more of a feeling of being in the room. Instead of someone sending a picture of it, you just look at it. All three of these things I love because they're not just, hey, well, okay, the whiteboard thing, that's just really cool technology. But all these things, the value of them isn't, this is a neat thing we can do. It's users needed this. So let's move on to our takeaways. We promised you guys 5 takeaways. By the way, I hope you've enjoyed it up to now. This has been a fun one for me. So what I want to leave you with is, first, walk the path. We talked about desire paths, but you need to walk the path. What I mean by that is, it's not enough when you design a room to talk to the team leader and say, what kind of meetings do you run? What do you think you need? Sit in the meetings, more than one of them. See how they really work. They might not realize what they need. They might not realize that, hey, we do stand-up meetings and we don't have a whiteboard. Or, hey, we have all these whiteboards and we never use them. Walk the path with them. Remember, it's not about the room, it's about the team. The AV industry has completely revolutionized in the last few years, and that's not a word I like to use because it's such a big word, revolutionized, but it's really changed. We used to serve the room. The room was the client. An AV integrator would walk into a room and say, oh, okay, rectangular room, monitor on this wall, whiteboard on this wall, microphone here, that's how you do a room. Now it doesn't matter what shape or size the room is. It's irrelevant. What matters is who's meeting here and how do they meet. Is it your marketing team? Is it your app development team? Is it your sales team? Is it your executive team? Great. Let me sit in a few meetings and see what they do. We're not serving the room, we're serving the team. Remember, the real office is virtual, like I said before. The brick, the mortar walls, it's a nice thing to have. It helps. But what people are really, really working with is the cloud. Another thing is, don't try to force desire paths. We saw what happened in that other scene where they, if you try to put down the fences and you try to put down the don't walk on the grass signs, that's not going to get you anywhere. And also, if you think you know better than them, if they really like using one app and you think another app has better features, but they don't like it, if the first app is enterprise secure, let them use the one they like. You don't know better than them. And finally, and this is the biggest thing that I've learned in the last few years, is good enough is not good enough. You really need exceptional audio, exceptional video, because it's not about just the first 5 minutes, let's check, does this work? Oh, it's a good video call, we're good. It's about surviving a 3-hour, 4-hour, 5-hour working session without being unnecessarily strained by having to try to figure out what you're looking at and what you're listening to, and not even realizing that you're being strained. Good enough is not good enough. So with that, I once again like to thank my hosts, Highfive and Dolby. If you want to connect with us, if you want to connect with me or anyone at Highfive, these are our links. And now I'd like to ask Chris if we have any questions from the viewers.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, David. Really great stuff, and thank you, Jen. Yeah, we're going to open it up to Q&A, and just a couple of quick reminders. If you do have a question, and we have some that have come in, thank you very much. Please post it in the box titled Ask a Question. And once again, for those of you who are expanded the webinar into full screen mode, please reduce that viewing mode so that you can actually see the Ask a Question tab. So let's take a look at our first question. And I love this question because here at Highfive, we've reimagined meetings, okay? And we've also reimagined something else, and that's hardware as a service. So this is a really great question that touches on that. And the question, this is for you, Jen. It's my understanding that you provide the equipment, and this is more of a membership model. So I think what they're asking here is the equipment free? Are they paying for it? So maybe you can expand on what we do with our hardware as a service model.
Absolutely. So if you let's take the metaphor of SaaS, right? Software as a service, right? So what we've done with hardware as a service is that maybe reframe this in terms of, you might have heard this before, devices as a service, and or even if you go to your cable provider, right? So they rent you the cable modem, pay them $10 a month, and then at the end of the year, if they have a new version, an upgraded version of your modem, they'll send it out to you, right? But in terms of the support and maintenance and all the firmware upgrades, that is done by the vendor. So kind of taking that notion and concept, that's what we've done here at Highfive, right? So we partnered with Dolby, which is probably the top of the line in terms of audio hardware and video hardware as well. So we're being able to distribute this and sell this to our customers. Whereas, giving you look at the traditional in historic days of telepresence, right? You'd have to pay tens of thousands of dollars for this top of the line equipment. And so what we're doing is providing a very affordable option for customers to be able to take advantage of this top of the line hardware. And all you do is pay it on a recurring basis, pay it on monthly, and the time that comes out or that we need new hardware, we send it to you. And we also provide support, maintenance, all the upgrades, bi-weekly, releases every week, every 2 weeks. We push that out, all for free.
I love that because technology is moving so fast that I'm afraid to buy hardware now. It's crazy. As soon as I buy any hardware, the next week there's a better version out and I feel stupid. Software, I'm fine. Give me the update. I want hardware to act like software. If you come up with a new version, just send it to me. Don't make me. Every time I buy one of these, the next week the new one comes out and I feel stupid. So yeah, hardware as a service is definitely a winner for me.
Terrific. Thank you, guys. And I love this next question because I think it tackles one of the hardest challenges that's faced video conferencing for a long, long time. And even the big guys are really struggling to solve this. And I think Highfive has solved it. So the question is, I have to manage 3 different conferencing systems for my company. Are you guys able to interop with those? So I think what they're asking here is if they're in an actual meeting room and they're using a different conferencing system, could they use a Dolby Conference phone with a Highfive software on there to interact with those different video conferencing systems, to access them, to launch those meetings? Jen, could you tackle that?
Yeah, great question by the audience, and I'm happy to, very pleased to state that or announce that we just released a feature capability that we can, and so end users that if they come in to a meeting room, it doesn't matter what video conferencing service provider is. Anybody from Zoom, BlueJeans, LifeSize, they can go in, tap on the button, tap to join the meeting, and you're in, right? There's no special configuration, and which is pretty awesome for an end user perspective, right? So in the past days, what would you usually do if you have to learn new applications, you have to download, figure out where the dial-in information, whatever it is, we've really provided and built this elegant way for end users to just dial in and have meetings with anybody, whether it be customers, partners, other employees, so on and so forth. And it's called Meeting Connector, so I'm going to do a little plug there, but definitely check it out, and would love to give a demo to anybody who's interested in it.
Yeah, and that's really crucial. I can tell you from my time in the video conferencing industry, there have been vendors that have tried to come into the market and say, oh, don't worry about interop, just use our stuff, it's so great, and throw away all your other stuff. And even if their stuff was great, the market said, no, we're not doing that. I mean, some organizations have just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars setting up video in their environment. If you show something that's new and great that's going to enhance that they can use in their new rooms and connect to it a better way, that's great. But if you tell them it won't work with the old stuff, and you got to throw all the old stuff away, and you got to tell people who like using the old stuff they can't use it anymore, non-starter. So no matter how good you guys are, interop is essential.
Yep.
Listen, Jennifer, David, and for everybody who attended today's webinar, thank you very, very much. Again, the webinar has been recorded, so we will be sending out to all attendees. And you can look for a blog follow-up from David at Let's Do Video on today's webinar. And also look for more information about the Meeting Connector that Jen Bowie mentioned. And we've also got a visual white paper that you can find at highfive.com on our hardware as a service model. So lots of good assets for you guys to resource. So on behalf of David and Jennifer, I'm Chris Heineman for Highfive. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.